Hi everyone, let us study about mischief rule in this video. Basically, there are three primary rules of interpretation: literal rule, mischief rule, and golden rule. Video about literal rule is already posted. If you wanna learn about literal rule, please go and check it out. Now to start with mischief rule, it is one of the oldest rules of interpretation. It is also famously called as hidden rule or purposive rule of construction. When an ambiguity arises during interpretation, the courts, to interpret that ambiguity, will look into the rationale or reason why such particular law was brought. Hence, courts assume that the underlying reason why Parliament legislated this particular act or statute is more important than the words. So, the court approaches and adopts a purposive rule of interpretation, that is, they aim to suppress the mischief which the statute is seeking to redress and advance the remedy. Mischief rule was originated in Heden's case in 1584, hence it is also called as Heden's rule. In this case, the Baron of Exchequer gave us four things which are to be considered. First one is what was the common law before making of the act. Second one is what was the mischief and defect for which the common law did not provide. Third one is what remedy the Parliament had resolved and appointed to cure the disease of Commonwealth. And last one is what was the true reason of remedy. When the material words in the statute are capable of bearing two or more constructions, the most firmly established rule for construction of such words is the rule laid down in Heden's case. Heden's rule has now obtained the status of a classic. This rule directs that the court must adopt such construction which shall suppress the mischief and advance the remedy. But this does not mean that a construction should be adopted which ignores the plain meaning of the words or disregard the context and the collection in which they occur. Whenever we hear the word mischief rule, the first case which comes to our mind is Smith versus Hughes. Under Street Offences Act 1957, it was crime for prostitutes to loiter or solicit on the streets for the purpose of prostitution. Defendants were calling men in the street from balconies and by tapping windows. They argued that they were not themselves in the street, hence they fell outside the definition given in the act. But the court considered the intention of the Street Offenders Act 1957, which was to address public solicitation. The court ruled that the balconies and windows were extension of the street and said that these activities were constituting mischief which the act was aimed to redress. Hence, court adopted the mischief rule which suppressed the mischief and advanced the remedy, thereby finding the defendants guilty. One more case is Royal College of Nursing versus DHSS. The Royal College of Nursing brought an action challenging the legality of the involvement of nurses in carrying out abortions. The offences against the Person Act 1861 makes it an offence for any person to carry out an abortion. The Abortion Act 1967 provided that it would be an absolute defence for a medically registered practitioner to carry out abortions provided that certain conditions were satisfied. Advances in medical science meant surgical abortions were largely replaced with hormonal abortions, and it was common for these to be administered by nurses. It was held that it was for nurses to carry out such abortions. The act was aimed at doing away with the black street abortions where no medical care was available. The actions of the nurses were therefore outside the mischief of the Act 1861 and within the contemplate defense in the 1967 Act. Now, let us discuss some of the advantages and disadvantages of mischief rule. Advantages. One is that it closes the loophole in the law by suppressing the mischief. Second one, it avoids unjust or absurd results in sentencing. Third one, it allows the law to develop and adapt to the changing needs. Some of the disadvantages of mischief rule are that it gives judges a law-making role infringing upon the separation of powers, and some judges can bring their own opinion, views and prejudices to a case. Third one is that it creates a crime after the event, thus infringing the rule of law. To conclude with, mischief rule is one of the most important rules of interpretation, and it is helpful in suppressing the mischief and advancing the remedy, thereby bringing out the true intention as to why such particular law was passed.